Nación Podcast presenta Al otro lado del micrófono, tu ración de metapodcasting diaria. Un proyecto de Jorge Marín Nieto.
This is a new episode of Al otro lado del micrófono. I am Sinead, and I am narrating this podcast on behalf of Jorge Marín, creator, producer, host, and editor of this podcast, and Carmenia, his monthly collaborator. Just a week ago, we got an email from Coffee. Not a direct email, but a newsletter. In these kinds of mails, they inform us, the users, about changes and new things on their platform. And we usually read them diagonally, but not this time, because the word podcast was written as a subject for the email. And of course, as you can imagine, Jorge couldn't stop himself from opening it and reading it carefully. The email talked about an ambassador program they had launched, and they pointed at their ambassadors as a way to make Coffee the best place for creators to make an income online. They also said that they will be sharing their stories and advice every month. They chatted with ambassadors Lawrence and Lindsay from the podcast production company Long Cat Media, and they talked about why they chose Coffee and what it's like to run a podcast company. And then there was some info that attracted Jorge. Coffee is hosting a competition for International Podcast Day. In order to get the chance to win $100 for our podcast, we have to create a post on Coffee telling our supporters about our podcast and what their support means to us, and embed a Spotify or SoundCloud clip of our episode. This is it. To participate, we had to share our post on Twitter and Instagram with the hashtags #Coffee Podcast, #International Podcast Day, and tag @CoffeeButton. It's also possible to email them directly to sophie@coffee.com. The deadline is September 29th, 2020. The winner will be announced on Twitter @CoffeeButton on #International Podcast Day, the 30th of September. Following this info, they interviewed Longcat's ambassadors, and even though we are not reading it, we are going to use this Coffee proposal to answer the same questions that Coffee's team asked them. The longtime listeners of Al otro lado del micrófono already know this podcast, but it's possible that new listeners might arrive thanks to this contest, so we will do a small recap. Al otro lado del micrófono is a meta podcast, a program that talks about other podcasts and podcasting in general. For us, it is a 5-minute daily program that brings news, tools, curiosities, events, and nonetheless recommendations to other podcasts. Our main source of income, basically the only one, is Coffee. We use donations to pay expenses derived from our podcast and also to create giveaways related to listening or podcast creation. Besides getting donations, we also love receiving support through messages hidden in those virtual napkins for those virtual coffees, those thank you notes for our work to promote podcasting, and those thank yous for recommending podcasts, for entertaining you, informing you, and communicating every morning. Question: how is a normal day in podcast making? Well, for us it depends on the type of podcast we have to produce each day. But speaking about Al otro lado del micrófono, this season we have a different workflow. Instead of daily preparation and recording sessions, we've divided the work into several weekly phases. On day 1, Jorge arranges all subjects, new or previous ideas, makes a compilation, and arranges them on the calendar for next week. On day 2, he creates daily scripts, the structure and approach to each episode to write the scripts. On day 3, we record all 5 episodes and equalize the recording. And on day 4, he edits and has them ready to publish. Finally, on day 5, he programs the airing day for each episode, social media posts, and in Telegram groups. This season, Jorge also sends them to Lockout Media, so they have the episodes in advance. Question: why did you choose coffee? We chose it because we've seen it in other projects and it seemed like a reliable site. The possibilities they offer and their pro plan are very convincing. It's something like a patron, but more pleasant. The virtual coffee is a great way to make donations feel warmer than direct donations via PayPal or Patreon, which seem a bit colder to us. These coffee giveaways are the perfect way to return our donors the favor and invite them to a coffee or a drink anytime we meet in any event. Question: what's your favorite comment from a donor? There isn't one special comment, but our favorite message, and very often repeated, is when people thank Jorge for continuing to promote podcasting. That's the main goal of our podcast, and we think that's Jorge's strongest skill. Any podcast day or International Podcast Day, Jorge posts a message on social media that says something like, "I wish people could embrace podcasting in order to make the other 364 days podcast days as well, because for me, they are." This episode was good to participate in the contest and to open up a bit and talk about what's behind the podcast and our coffee profile. We want to thank all those of you who support us with your virtual coffees, Telegram groups, people who share the program or hit like in any episode. Also to all of you that understand podcasting as we do, as something that needs to have a global pushover, the ones who defend this media and your favorite podcasts. Like every Friday, we want to wish you a nice weekend filled with podcasts that you love so much that you want to recommend them next Monday on Lunes Podcastero. Don't forget to get into the Telegram channel on our website to vote for your favorite episode from this week in our weekly poll. And now I say goodbye. Like every day, I'm going back to that place where you are right now, to the other side of the microphone.